Welcome to Season 4 of the NAC 4 Business Podcast.
Before we get into today's conversation, Canada Growth Network. Here's the math. A full CRM, email marketing, funnels, and automations for less than a coffee a day. That's $47 a month Canadian with a $1 trial to start. If you're building a business and still duct taping tools together, check the link in the show notes.
My name is Kenny Stoddart, now the founder of Iron Mind Advisors, which is my own executive advisory and coaching firm, along with some keynote speaking. But really, I am currently located in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. So if I wanted to share a little bit about me. I grew up in a little town outside of Buffalo called Hamburg, New York. So many of you are probably familiar. It's just, on the other side of Buffalo, right by where the Bills play in Orchard Park, New York there. I was born and raised there. And the highest point in Hamburg, which as you go further inland in New York, it becomes quite mountainous. But where I lived in Hamburg, I overlooked Lake Erie. I could see it from my bedroom window. And 8 miles across the river was Fort Erie, Ontario, Canada. It's where the Peace Bridge is. And it was, us being from Western New York, we always went up to Canada to either camp or fish, or in my case, both. And then also play hockey. So I was a hockey player my whole young careers. And when you got good at hockey, you had to go to Canada and then get your butt kicked. So that was the growing up part of, but I spent many weekends traveling throughout Ontario. My favorite band of all time is from Kingston called The Tragically Hip, and I'll get some more shaking heads there, but I followed them through my entire, very pivotal days in my high school and the, late 80s, all through the 90s, and then all the way up until the final show in Toronto in 2016, I believe it was. But that was kind of my Canada story. And then fast forward a little bit. And, when I was 18, I left Western New York and landed myself at the Citadel, which is a military college in South Carolina. So I was, really fresh out of New York, born and raised, and, decided to up my challenges a little bit and go to the Citadel, which was, it was and still is. It's a very challenging military school to get through, great education. It's got military and leadership components, all of which I'm super proud of. And, I graduated from the Citadel, and so we're going to play the clock a little bit. So I graduated in 1997. And if we look back at that time period, the first Gulf War was just coming to an end. It was a time of peace in 1997. And our president at the time in the United States was Bill Clinton, and there was a major military cutback after the first war. And I was offered the option to forego my military obligations because of the military spend back and essentially enter the real world. Now, at the time, the real world looked like the dot-com boom was about to take off, right? So I was, a month after I graduated in 1997, I drove to Atlanta, Georgia, and I was hired by a company at the time called Secure IT. And that is where I started my 27-year journey in, at the time, what we called internet security. And ultimately, over the years, became where it's at now, cybersecurity. And I noticed a few things on one of Trevor's slides. He had an SSL logo for some reason or another, I think it was, but that was really where I played most of my career, in the encryption, SSL, e-commerce security role. And I worked for companies. So I went through a wild ride, if you will. Secure IT was bought by VeriSign in 1998 within my first year of being there. I went from VeriSign to another startup called GeoTrust, which was then again acquired by VeriSign in 2000, which was acquired by Symantec in 2011, which was acquired by Broadcom in 2020, I believe. So that was the wild ride that I was on in the encryption space. And I was in a role of, really from the infancy of website security, I was playing in when the first questions came out, well, we need to take credit cards on our, we need to be able to accept credit cards on our website. Okay, how do we secure it? And that was where SSL came in, and encryption really solved that problem. And quite frankly, still does to this day. It's a solution that really, encryption and the strength of it has changed, but the algorithms and the level of security is still what's kind of paving the way to provide, end-to-end encryption in all different forms or fashions. So I had this really amazing career. I got to travel the world working with different companies. I became the global channel manager for Symantec covering Central and Latin America for about 6 years, where I got to work very closely with all of our friends and colleagues in all of the different countries and learn their cultures. But before that, I was asked to go and start a business in Japan when I had really no idea. I mean, I was young and 25, 26 years old, and we started GeoTrust Japan. And at the time, I was just happened to be the most adventurous because I was the guy that always raised his hand. New challenge, new adventure, I'm in. So that was really, how I defined that 27-year career of, really a very, very successful career that I got to work for some fabulous leaders, and I got to manage hundreds of fabulous sales leaders and reps and account managers and channel reps and work with these amazing companies and be all over the world and, representing big brands and doing multi-million dollar transactions and just really having a phenomenal career. And that was great. Fast forward until, I was in my late 40s. I'm just to clear any confusion, I'm now 52. So just over the past few years, I struggled with what is what we call executive burnout. For those who have struggled or have any experience with it, it's not a buzzword. It's very, very serious. It almost cost me my life, quite frankly. And that what how I define executive burnout is not, a couple bad weeks at the office or a bad quarter or whatever. That's exhaustion or but I really lost my identity of who I actually was because I was caught up in the golden handcuffs, or, I was always chasing big quotas, or I was always, wanting to be very, very successful, and perhaps for the wrong reasons, because I was asked to, really step outside who I was, to be, to able to do deals and to, um, and it really just it took a toll on my life. I struggled with alcoholism. I quite frankly, I almost, I hit my rock bottom a few years ago, and that's why I do things like today. Is my new career at Iron Mind Advisors is helping other people navigate similar struggles because, I learned a lot from that, and I was fortunate enough to be able to recognize the fact that the trajectory was not good for me and I needed to make some changes. And that's what I did. So I decided to go to the Betty Ford Clinic for rehab to get that portion of my life cleared up, because anybody that knows or who has had family members struggle with alcoholism, it's also not funny. Or I know we don't think no one thinks that it is, but it's just such a terrible thing. Even for someone that despises it as much as I do, I really struggled breaking my ways and my habits from it. So I decided to get help. And then I also decided to go back to get my master's in licensed mental or clinical mental health counseling so I can help other people not only walk through those challenges, like I mentioned, but understand the behavior of the brain and addiction and why we make some of the decisions we do, not always bad ones. And I mentioned boundaries when that one word that I referred to when how I rewind, for many years I didn't have boundaries, right? And that was one of the first major changes that I made to my life when I was rebuilding my own identity, which is another reason why I focus on identity gain now, because, like I said, for 27 years, I was talking about identity loss or protection or theft. And then I also lost my own identity. Truly, I did. And now I've got it back to being the best version of myself that I've always wanted to be. It's truly amazing. It really is. And I'm not saying that because I'm like, I was touched by, like I said, I was almost down and out, even perhaps dead. But now, like I said, I'm about to graduate from Liberty University with now my second master's. I've been guided in such a path to be able to help others that are, I was the person, I was the salesperson, I was the guy that was always in the airports, I was the one that was stretching it too thin. And now I'm trying to give back not only to people like us, but to the people that work, to the younger generations that are entering that same phase, about what it means to put boundaries in place and to recognize that when, just because you're 28 or 32 or whatever at that age, you can run harder than us as we get older, but it does catch up with you. And that is what burnout does look like. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes almost 30 years to take you down properly, because as high achievers, we embrace it. We love the challenge, right? We don't ask for help. And my message after, like I said, all I've been through is that strength and asking for help is truly the new sign of strength. Being a leader that encourages your staff, your people to assess their situation is also a true sign of strength. I think that identity, when you're operating at a level like I am now, because I have my identity back, it's so much more productive than a fraction of myself, or even 75% of myself, because I'm doing something that I love, I'm passionate about. I'm doing what I want to do. And I know we can break that down in so many ways, but it's truly phenomenal what we can do. And I know there's people on this call right now that are truly passionate about what they do. And they probably have at one time been in a position where they might not have been. And you can see the difference. But when we apply that to an organizational model, and how I work with organizations to just improve performance at an identity level has been so fabulous for me, because it justifies some of the challenges that I faced, because now I've learned from them and I'm giving back to others. And that's my story. And it can go on and on and on, but the point is my key word is boundaries, because I know what burnout truly feels like. And there are all these different symptoms. We can talk about alcoholism, we could talk about fatigue, we could talk about anxiety, or, just weight gain or weight loss or blood pressure, all these little things that are little indicators, and we treat them. We treat the apps like we upload the version, but we don't take care of the operating system. And I'm huge into taking care of the operating system. So I break that down now. Instead of a true operating system at a server or whatever, I'm working with the human, and it is delightful to be able to give back in such a fashion. So thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate it very much.
Everything you heard today is for educational purposes only. It's not professional advice. Before you act on anything, talk to a certified expert in your area. Your accountant, your lawyer, someone who knows your situation. We share perspectives. You make the decisions. Want more? Head over to blog.knack4business.com, packed with practical episodes on AI, marketing, leadership, and growth. No fluff, just the good stuff. Subscribe while you're there. Until next time, keep building.